European production and on European dissemination, so to say, of the vaccines. But had we not taken a European decision, I'm firmly convinced then perhaps 3-4 countries, including Germany, which is relatively wealthy, would have gotten its vaccine fast. Some countries within the European Union would still wait for it, and then there would be some countries in the middle. That would have caused a tremendous challenge for the cohesion, for the integration of the European Union. And therefore it was good to operate on the basis of European solutions. And I would say this example can also be transferred to the global situation. The pandemic is just one case, although of course a particularly striking case, which demonstrates to us that falling back on nation states, going alone approaches are not solutions. Why is that so? Because global issues need global answers, need global approaches, and because only by acting together, only by pooling our resources, material and intellectual, can we really cope with the challenges which these global crises pose to our social systems, to our economic systems, including, by the way, also to our health systems. And can we, in particular, of course, hope for a repair, for a revitalization of the global economy? Let me start with the economy. Obviously, the first demand of our days is
okay. Nee, das ist doch gut. Ich meine das auch.
To make our health systems much more resilient. Because now we know that after the pandemic might just be before the next pandemic. Mind you, this pandemic was not really a black swan, as some people think. Experts, scientists have often spoken about the possibility, or at least the potential threat of similar pandemics, but our policymakers have not been able or not been willing to react to these threats, because it is always cheaper, of course, to say this is abstract and therefore we leave it to a later generation. So I think this lesson we should have learned. Both Germany and India will have, first of all, of course, to do their homework. We have to allocate more resources to our health systems. But especially in this field, and Gurjit has already referred to it, I see also a very, very particular and tremendous opportunity for us to create win-win situations. And that's not just in the short term, but also for a long-term partnership. As you know, the mRNA vaccine has about 280 components supplied by 86 different countries, by 86 suppliers from 19 different countries. And India, as was rightly said, is the most important supplier in that respect. And as we all know, this vaccine is so complex, it requires such cooling chains that obviously not everybody can sort of operate with it, let alone produce it. If you only make one mistake in putting together these 280 components, then the whole series is gone. But India, I think, is amongst the very few countries with its very elaborate pharmaceutical business and industry who could indeed cope with such a challenge. Therefore, I think the answer of the day should, in the long run, yes, also be a transfer of patents or perhaps even an opening up of patent laws. But in the short run, because that process is so complex, we need partnerships between the Indian pharmaceutical complex and between German producers. Mind you, even we in Germany had to realize that we can't really produce these vaccines. We were fortunate enough to have two immigrants, two Turkish scientists who developed this vaccine, but we didn't have the production capabilities in order to produce for our demand, let alone for the European or for the global demand. So if we want to have a sustainable, a resilient production chain, then I think we need the cooperation between India and Germany. And by the way, this would also apply to infrastructure changes, because the real challenge is, of course, for the future to think in terms of risk prevention, to think in terms of risk mitigation, and to think in terms of risk management. And that all will require, of course, much more cooperation between our two countries. The most pressing challenge I mentioned already is, of course, to revitalize our economies. How can this be done? I think we need, of course, to revitalize growth, but not any growth. I think if the pandemic has taught us something, then it is that we need the right kind of growth. We need sustainable growth. We need a growth which does not overburden our ecology continuously, not overuse the scarce resources of our planet. It seems to me, by the way, that on the bilateral level, we got the priorities for revitalizing the economies right. If I may just mention, of course, the most important sectors in which we cooperate. We focus on education, including vocational training, also given the need, of course, to create more jobs in India. We focus on the cooperation in science, research, innovation, by the way, including also the promotion of startups, as one of the questions was. We concentrate on issues of connectivity, on crucial areas of environmental protection, including renewables, on digitalization, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. I don't want to bore you with that. But I think we have far too often, fallen behind in terms of implementation. The areas defined are right, but we have not given enough urgency, we have not given enough action-oriented implementation to these issues which we have defined. Why? I think there are many reasons. One of these reasons may be that we don't know enough about India. It is an issue of perspection. Another reason is that, especially we in Germany, we have been focusing far too much on the issues which arose out of the unification of Germany, out of the unification of the European Union. We are risk averse, and so on and so forth. You can issue many things, but at least I would say, with our former President Roman Herzog, we in Germany, wir haben kein Erkenntnisproblem, sondern ein Umsetzungsproblem. We in Germany, we don't have a problem in analysis, but a problem in implementation. And if I may say so, I think the same applies, of course, to a certain extent, also to India. The Germans have been running around over the last 16 years after the reform introduced by Gerhard Schröder, and been asking everybody else to undertake reforms while we have refused to undertake. While India has, of course, undertaken reforms, the GST reform, the agricultural reform, but undoubtedly, of course, there is more to do. Then another issue, of course, on which we have been speaking for a long time is overregulation. In that respect, India has, I think, made progress. It has moved from rank 140 to rank 63 in the ease of doing business index. But obviously, there are still far too many remnants from the license Raj, which still, of course, persist. But then, of course, just ask Elon Musk, while he is trying to establish his company in Brandenburg, how many issues of overregulation he is facing in Germany. And of course, he is not happy at all with us in that respect. Then, of course, there is protectionism. This also is not an issue which is alone where some industries are not yet ready to cope with the headwinds of international competition. But you also have these protectionist tendencies in Germany. Look just at the common agricultural policy, for example, as one issue. In other words, we should not complain about each other, but we should cooperate in resolving these issues together. And in that context, I must say, I'm extremely happy that during the last EU-Indian summit, we have made some headway. I regret as much as Gurjit that this has not been possible under German presidency. But at least I think we have been able to move, and we have been able to move also with the support of the German Chancellor in restarting negotiations on the FTA, negotiations which got stalled already at the time when I was ambassador to India. We have also agreed, of course, on the fact that we need to have an EU-India investment agreement. Both of these agreements, I think, are important. I don't expect that especially the FTA negotiations will be easy sailing, because obviously there are still a number of obstacles which will have to be resolved. Gurjit mentioned some of them. But what I think is new and what has changed, and that is also due to the pandemic, is that the sense of urgency has changed. I see for the first time really since I'm an adult, I see that the usual German yearning for the maintenance of the status quo is giving way, you know, to a yearning for change. And of course, it will be quite interesting to see how this will affect the upcoming elections in Germany in September. The investment agreement, I think, is also extremely important, not only because the bilateral investment agreements have run out, but also I think because in view of the new opportunities in search for more secure, for shorter, for more sustainable supply lines, I think that will be a confidence building enterprise. And also because I perceive the need for more legal security, for example, in the pending cases of retroactive tax laws and other things. I agree with Gurjit. You must cope with the way in which the society functions, in which you want to operate. But still, of course, there are issues which have to be resolved, and I'm sure that this will also be resolved. The third agreement, also not totally unimportant, is of course one on the rules of origin that will also help in confidence building. So I think we are up for a new start. But how about the political environment? Very frankly, I don't think that we can just leave that aside, because especially in Germany, there are people who worry that our strategic partnership, which was hitherto based on common values, will be or may be affected by Hindutva, by the tendencies to replace the notion of a secular and liberal India, the India which cherished unity and diversity, by Hindu identity politics. And of course, it would be insincere not to mention the negative trends in the human freedom and freedom of press indices. But then, you know, having studied the Indian democracy, the extraordinary, the astonishing way in which the Indian democracy has deepened and has thrived in spite of sometimes very, very odd conditions, I personally am quite confident that these worries are an overreaction, that the safety valves, that the self-healing mechanisms in the Indian constitution and society will prevail. Just taking a look at the globally oriented, very well-educated Indian middle class is for me, you know, a very much encouraging development. I have also come to admire the argumentative Indian, which is of course also an Indian who does not just accept things as they are, but who wants to argue about it and who wants to see progress and who will be demanding also on politicians. I see that already now, you know, a feature of Indian democracy is at work, the famous anti-incumbency factor. You know, in other words, I do not share these worries. I'm still very much upbeat as far as the Indian democracy and its workings are concerned. And the strong commitment, of course, of India to a rule-based international system, which we share, to the rule of law in general, our partnership in the Alliance for Multilateralism, which also means, of course, that we do not only want to strengthen, but in order to strengthen them, we want to reform international multilateral institutions like the United Nations, the WTO, the World Bank, the World Health Organization, and so on and so forth. I think they signify that India and Germany and India and the European Union are really indispensable partners in shaping the global world of the 21st century. We in Germany, that's true, we have long looked with a certain obsession at China. And we have tended to overlook that we have so much more in common with India, and certainly in terms of values. But there, I think we also can perceive a change right now. I mean, the behavior of these so-called wolf warrior diplomats of China have certainly demonstrated to everybody who can see that China, yes, is still an important business partner, but China is also, of course, a systemic rival. And the challenge is really to also contain China and its aggressive behavior. And who else could do that than, you know, India, the European Union, the United States, and others taking together? This has also been one of the main reasons for the elaboration of policy guidelines on the Indo-Pacific region to which Gurjit just referred. I think the German government has acknowledged also in that concept the central role which India plays for us as a strategic partner. I fully agree there is much to be done on the strategic field, and you know, we have maybe overlearned our historic lessons, but Germany also in that respect is starting to grow up. Well, yes, I think in summing up, I would agree with my friend Gurjit Singh that he said recently in looking at the Indo-EU summit, everything is in place and we've just got to make good use of it. If we succeed in filling our agreements, our projects, our aspirations with substance, if we succeed in pooling our strengths and our resources, then I really believe that the sky is the limit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this really comprehensive. I mean, I'm repeating myself because I said the same thing for His Excellency Gurjit Singh, and I must say the same for you, because although you're talking about the same topic, these are two different presentations with two different foci and extremely important points that you have raised. I mean, you were talking about this very active middle-class Indian, and I was wondering if any active, very active, politically active and economically active and Indians want to ask any questions. And like I said, you can just jump in. You do not need to raise your hand and wait for me to do it, because till I scroll through all the screens, yeah, we will have lost time. So just jump in and ask your question and then mute your mic again.
Thank you, Excellency, for the very important and outlook perspective that you had for the collaboration between India and Germany. So you rightly mentioned that during this pandemic times, we need to have a very good base in Germany as well for the future, right? But so in my perspective, what I, as a student, so I'm currently in Stuttgart studying for my first year. So what I personally feel is that the students form an important base for the business perspective, because they are the future, means they are the roots of the future. So but in your perspective, what do you think is the next step means what's the plan for getting the students who are stuck not only in India but in other countries due to this pandemic, getting them into Germany so that they can integrate with the culture, they can understand that how the German culture and how the German industries actually work, to integrate the culture and take up the business or improve the relationship the countries have. So what's your take on that?
fully agree with you that obviously it's the students who will forge the future together with us. Let me say in that respect that Ambassador Gurjit Singh and myself have also been patrons, so to say, of an Indo-German Young Leaders Forum. We have indeed tried to do exactly what you have mentioned. We have tried to bring the young leaders of India and Germany closer together, to establish networks with them and for them, and to create a person-to-person relationship, which will carry beyond the day. And I think indeed that the challenge is, especially for us in Germany, to promote this much more than we have done hitherto. You have seen that in the meantime, we are quite proud that on German, especially technical universities, we have basically the contingent of Indian students is the second largest in the world. There are still more Chinese here. This may also have to do with the fact that young Indians prefer looking towards English-speaking countries, and therefore they prefer going to the United States and to the United Kingdom and to other places. And language is, of course, an issue. And I think our Max Müller-Bavans are still not well equipped enough in order to really cope with a full-fledged demand. But it's work in progress. It's happening. Plus, what I think is also very, very important is that Germany is finally, after many, many years, opening up to giving students who have graduated here in Germany the opportunity to also work. And we have, in that respect, totally continuously lowered the thresholds for them to take up work. I'm not saying, that I'm happy with the situation as it is, but it's work in progress and it's happening, and we've got to continue along this path. But I fully agree with you. What you say is really how we can forge the future between our two countries, which at the end of the day must be based, by people not only knowing each other, but also appreciating and respecting each other. And I think the main problem which we still face with respect to India is the perspective in Germany that India is a faraway country, is still a very much an underdeveloped country, which is not true. In so many fields, we can learn from India. When I look, for example, at the way in which digitalization has developed in Germany, my God, the Indian software prowess is much more developed than ours is, and that is true in many fields. If I look, for example, to what India is doing in terms of satellites, in terms of, discovering the world beyond the world, so to say, then I really think in the nuclear field, there are many fields, and therefore, these wrong perceptions can be corrected, and they will only be corrected if we meet more often, if we know much more of each other. And the last point which I want to make in that respect is, while we have a considerable contingent of Indian students in Germany, the same is not true in the other direction. I think we've got to work much more often on both sides, that more German students are also going to India. So there is still work to be done.
Yeah, hello, I'm Abhijit Yadav here. So thank you, Mr. Mutsibuk, for your wise words. You touched upon the perception and also a bit about Hindutva in your talk. So I'm just curious, it is not a criticism or a negative connotation to it. So when we look at India, then of course the rivalry with China comes into play immediately whenever we talk about the businesses. China has not been a fair player. It's evident, let it be issuing open threats to neighboring countries, the border issues, aggressive behavior from the Chinese communist parties. COVID is a good example how they tried to play it down and how world is suffering because of that. Democratic values, human rights issues, these topics, are they of not any concern for the German government, or let's say European Union, so to say? And where do moral, ethical, and democratic values stand when countries like Germany or European Union invest and cooperate with a fairly aggressive country like China? Will there be a change in the China policy in the coming future? Thank you.
Still on, yes. No, I think I can hear you loud and clear. I have often held that especially German diplomats should be careful in trying to lecture other countries. By the way, Ambassador Gurjit Singh knows that this also required me to reform my own thinking. In Kenya, I was a rather staunch supporter of the introduction of democratic values into the country. But I think we Germans have no reasons to lecture other people. But on the other hand, of course, it is quite clear that our partnership, our specific partnership, was so extraordinary because it is based on the values which we share. And therefore, I think also that India is, of course, for us, a much closer, a much more of a family friend than China can ever be. By the way, I mean this also literally. When I was living in India, I was in no time accepted in Indian families. And when we went visiting there, for the second or third time, the children called us uncle and auntie. This would have never happened to us in China, for example, and not only because of the language barrier. Now, we are much closer to each other, and therefore perhaps we expect a little bit more from each other. Nevertheless, I really don't think that we should lecture each other. And one thing is absolutely clear. China can never be a partner in that sense in which India can. Maybe we overlooked that for too long. One of the reasons is, of course, China was a market which developed much, much faster than the Indian market. And China was, of course, and still is, especially for the German automotive industry, which is still, I think, one of the most important most important employers, is, of course, up until today, an indispensable market. But it is a market, full stop. It is not a strategic partner. It is a systemic rival. And I think that will also have to be taken into account by German business in the long run. And I think when I speak to German business leaders these days, they understand it. In India, maybe when you go into a law court, it takes some time until you get a judgment, but you get a judgment which is based on the rule of law. In China, you don't know. You are totally delivered to the grace, of the authorities, and that's it. Take, for example, international patent rights, international intellectual protection rights. We have occasionally, a little dispute, for example, in the situation of a pandemic right now, but basically we share the same thinking. We believe in the same set of rules of laws. And therefore, I'm absolutely concerned, even if it were not for China developing into a systemic rival, that our partnership with India is bound to become more and more important if we only give it enough attention. Attention, I think, is really the catchword. And that requires, of course, understanding as to what is happening there. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Hi, this is Vineet here. So basically, first of all, thank you very much all the speakers for this very insightful discussion. My question is basically, Mr. Singh also highlighted the perception thing, and now we are talking about the perception. And on the top of it, you raised some concerns about the political scenario as well as the, so to say, the freedom of media and things like that. And then Abhijit and you yourself mentioned, highlighted some very valid points, but still we are stuck with this perception. So what are the possibilities? What are the top 2-3 things that Indian government, the corporates, as well as the agencies like CII, FICCI, and all of them, and of course, Chamber of Commerce from Germany, what are the top 2-3 things that we need to focus upon in the next 3 to 5 years to actually counter that perception? Because I've also experienced that perception. German companies are more than open to look at India, but only as a market, Indian market per se. They're not looking India as a hub for the global business, global operations like they do in China. So what possibly we can look at top 2-3 things in your experience, in your understanding that we should be looking at as a government, as agencies, as corporates?
Yeah. See, I don't want to really give any recommendations, let alone more to the Indian government. I think the Indians, knowing them, are strong enough, are vocal enough, are argumentative enough, and have the right, of course, to make their views known in elections, to express their aspirations and their expectations. And I have no doubt really that, what is necessary will be done in the context of India. What I see is indeed that we have a perception issue, but that has also to do with the fact that we don't really focus enough on each other. We, the professionals, do, of course. But how many reports do you read about positive developments in India, in Germany? India appears, when there's a cyclone hitting, like now. India appears, when there's a pandemic creating havoc, but India is not really here present in the minds of people with its tremendous achievements over the last couple of years. And I think that has to change. And one thing which I would recommend is that, for example, Indian media are trying to be better represented in Germany, but also German media better represented in India, because that will change perceptions, of course. We need more knowledge about each other. And of course, we need to focus much more on youth exchanges. And certainly in terms of youth exchange programs, we can do more.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your wonderful presentation and your answers. And I think I learned a lot in that, and especially the diplomatic way of saying what works, and then putting it between, so it's sandwiching it between what works and what doesn't work, so that in the end, something positive really appears. So yeah, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. Now it's time for our third creme de la creme, His Excellency Anup Mudgal. Ambassador Anup Mudgal retired in May 2016 as India's High Commissioner to Mauritius. His diplomatic career spans 32 years, and where he's served partly at the headquarters of the Ministry of External Affairs, handling relations with India's neighbors, ASEAN, Russian Federation, and some countries of Central and Eastern Europe, as well as issues relating to human resource development. His assignments abroad were in Brussels, Belgium, Mexico, Peru, former Yugoslavia, and of course, Germany, Austria. And post-retirement, he's even more active than he was pre-retirement. And so he has been engaged in several voluntary assignments, the important ones being he's a member at FICCI Task Force on Blue Economy. He's a member of Steering Committee on Blue Economy under PMEAC and chairs a working group on security, strategic dimensions, and international engagement, and member and core team of Kalinga International Foundation, chair Diaspora Committee, ARSP, former Joint Secretary, Association of Indian Diplomats, and also he's a guest lecturer at various higher education and professional institutes. He has co-edited and co-authored several books and articles on a range of policy issues. And of course, the most important thematic focus is blue economy, including Industry 4.0 applications, maritime security, diaspora, development partnership, and trade policy and market access. Thank you very much, Ambassador Mudgal, for taking your time and being with here today. And now, I love to make this joke and say, instead of saying, now the floor is all yours, I'd love to say, the screen is all yours. We can't hear you, Ambassador.
I was saying it was really a great pleasure listening to two very distinguished former ambassadors. In fact, when I spoke to Rajesh, we were discussing what I could talk about. Having served in various European capitals, having dealt with European Union and member states at different point of time, of course, there was a temptation that I should also talk about India-EU relations or India-Germany relations. But then when I saw your names, Excellency, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh and Ambassador Milton Simberg, I thought, I don't think I would be able to add much value to those themes, which means India-EU relationship or India-Indo-German relationship. You have really extensively covered those issues. Many of those I wanted to cover under my theme. So I thought, let me talk something different, but would still apply to the larger theme of today's discussion. I, as Saya mentioned, in fact, I chair a center called Diaspora Research and Resource Center, which has been working for almost 3.5 years now. It is part of a larger organization, think tank called ARSP, and they have been working on diaspora issues for almost 40 years now. It is much before the government of India started really seriously discussing the diaspora issues. You see, at the DRRC, at the ARSP, we work on the theme called Vasudeva Kutumbakam. I'm sure you have heard this on many occasions. It basically means the world is a family. Now, this is a very, I would say, cross-cutting idea in India, you know, where we, given our history, given our pluralism, given our, you know, diversity, we are able to look at very diverse people as part of us. And as a result, a very old saying that Vasudeva Kutumbakam means the world is a family and needs to work like a family. Now, when you talk of a family, family works on certain critical inputs, and one of them is what is called trust. Do we trust the members in the family? Because if you do not trust the members in the family is not able to work like a family. After listening to two presentations before I came to the screen, Sajia, in fact, I saw why it is important to bring about that trust. In fact, both the ambassadors and those who ask questions, their main thrust of those doubts was, we have all the good intentions, but somehow on the ground, it's not working. And why it's not working is a question of perception. Is it a question of understanding? Is it a question of knowledge? Is it a question of trust? Now, you see, when you look at the governments, we know that there is a need for trust. And we have a lot of institutions, we have a lot of mechanisms for enhancing this trust through, we use normally the government to government channels, we use government to people channel, we promote people to people channel, we use all kinds of institutions for adding to the trust that these family members might have. But you see, Ambassador, in fact, even when you look at the family, you ask a family member, they would gladly join in a lot of things. They will join you in celebration, they will join you in grief, they will join you on maybe an expedition which is not entirely safe. But tell a family member that invest in a venture which you are running. The family member will think 10 times before he or she agrees to invest in a venture with you, which means when it comes to investing in a venture run by a member of family, now if you come, for example, not within the country, but outside the country, in another country, another unknown land, these decisions are not easy. these decisions are not easy. Investors, before investing, they would ask difficult questions because investment involves long-term commitment. Long-term commitment, not only with money, know-how, and technology, but also in terms of what kind of environment you're going to face. So the investor making an investment decision compared to a trading decision is much more difficult because trading decision is transactional. Investment decision is like a marriage. Now, do you take marriage decision easily? No, it takes a lot of time, lot of effort, lot of trust. And the same thing happens in investment. I think at the root cause of what we have been facing, in fact, Excellency, I was very much sitting in Brussels when we were trying to sow the seeds of FTA. And that was in the year, I think, 2000 or 1999, before the first summit, when we were preparing for the first India-EU summit. We were trying to kind of build grounds for opening a discussion on FTA. You know, I'm really shocked that we have taken so long and still we have not done. In fact, I was telling Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, you know, look at the larger picture. Look at the larger picture between India and European Union. Nobody can doubt the wisdom of this relationship in the medium to long run. But nobody is able to cross that bridge and translate that vision into action on the ground. What is lacking? Is it trust? Is it confidence, knowledge, and information which is lacking? Excellency, we are precisely working on that. We are looking at using the Indian diaspora for adding to that trust. India, there's a long history of Indian diaspora. Maybe some other day we'll talk about that. But if I look at the contemporary situation, Indian diaspora, which is probably amongst the largest in the world, if not the largest, we are 33 million people of Indian origin and non-resident Indians living in more than 100 countries. And Indian diaspora has done exceptionally well. They have done very well economically. They have done very well educationally, culturally, and now even politically. We had, Excellency, in Delhi, a conference of Indian origin members of parliament all over the world. We took only the sitting parliamentarians, not the former parliamentarians. Excellency, we had something about 160 members of parliament, mayors and ministers of Indian origin coming from almost 50 countries. And this number, if I do it today, will be larger. We have students, we have entrepreneurs, we have investors, we have traders, we have the cultural people, we have the journalists, we have the social workers. It's a very diverse diaspora. It's a very successful diaspora, and they have access. They have access to societies on both sides. This diaspora, Excellency, as you mentioned, that we share values. This diaspora has carried with them those values because of which the members of Indian diaspora are automatically seen as a member of family by the countries of their adoption. You rightly said, we start calling strangers as aunts and aunties, right? Uncles and aunties. And that is not really only a casual expression. Believe me, when we look at somebody, we suddenly relate to that somebody. Why? Because in our own history, we have related to so many people who were not like us. They didn't look like us, they didn't behave like us. Indians are never scared of a different viewpoint. You mentioned those argumentative Indian. Now, why is the Indian argumentative? Because he doesn't mind argumentation. Because the Indian feels a solution, if it all has to come, to a problem, to a mistrust, it will come through argument. You may call it argument. They say, no, this is constructive discussion. Are we trying to find a way out? If you both do not agree to find a solution, that solution will never be sustainable. And that is how the Indians, it may take more time. You rightly said, when you go to the court in India, it may take more time for finding a judgment, but the judgment when it comes will be based on rule of law. That is what we are trying to do, Excellency, because we think that somehow down the line, we are not able to tell our story to our partners abroad in the language which they understand, with the cultural nuances which they understand. And at the same time, we have not been able to understand their stories because they are in different language or different perception or different cultural nuances. Excellency, that is what we are trying to do. We know the diaspora is able to provide that bridge. The diaspora understands our language. When I say language, I mean a wider perspective of language. It's not only the language, but its cultural connotations, its business connotations, it's the confusion connotation, right? It's wavy mind connotations. It's going forth and back mindset. All those connotations I talk about. But Excellency, I'm sure you served in India, you know it. There is order in this turbulent looking behavior. And that order somehow we have to convey to our partners. And those messages, that story cannot be conveyed strictly through official channels, because official channels have too many restrictions and constraints of using language. Therefore, we want to use the diaspora in acting that bridge, which will then help overcome this missing trust, this perception question, which is absolutely essential. They need to carry that story abroad and explain to people in the language which they understand better. And they have to come to us back in India and tell us the story, why they don't trust you, why this perception gap is there, what needs to be done. Excellency, you, I am sure, being in Delhi, are aware of the mechanisms that we have for dealing with diaspora. It starts with our flagship program called Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, where we invite as Shahia has been using creme de creme, the top of the diaspora thinkers and thought leaders, and tell them our story and listen to their story, so that we are able to bring about convergence for better understanding. But now we have added a lot of more channels. We have, in fact, been engaging with the diaspora youth, as you rightly mentioned. This story will have to be carried on the soldiers of the youth. We have done our job, and probably we were not able to make a story understood all over the world. Now let's the next generation youth carry this story more effectively and make people understand what India is all about and make India understand what the world is all about. Excellency, in fact, I run several programs with diaspora youth. There is one called Know India program, where we bring a batch every month of about 50 members of diaspora youth from different countries. We take them around, we talk to them, we listen to them, we listen to their perceptions, we try to explain to them, we take lessons from them, and then go back to our authorities and say, please do these changes, because we are sending a wrong signal in terms of perception. But in case they do not understand our story, then we make sure that we do everything possible in making them understand that story. We are dealing with, as I said, youth journalists all over the world. We want to ask them what is lacking in this perception game. We talk to the scientists. In fact, we had recently a conference of Indian origin scientists all over the world and in India. You won't believe we had 25,000 people, all with scientific background and exchanging ideas. Why there was that gap? I think we hope what the official channels have somehow not been able to achieve, the diaspora would achieve those goals of bridging the trust gap, the perception deficit. In fact, you mentioned about COVID, so did Gurjeet. In fact, if we look at the mega trends post-COVID, I think we need to seriously look at the contribution India can make to finding more sustainable solutions. And we need to look very carefully at the European Union, how we can together make that difference. Excellency, as Sajia mentioned, I also work on sustainable development goals. I am a member of a task force on blue economy. I work on circular economy. I work on other sustainable development goals. And I am convinced sustainable development will not work unless everybody works together. And I am convinced when everybody works together, role of European Union and role of India will be critical to those pathways to success. If we do not come together for whatever reason, I'm sure we will fail the future generation in not giving them the pathways for more sustainable solutions. Otherwise, we'll keep facing the problems of pandemic. We'll keep facing the challenges to globalization. We'll keep facing these arguments of India first or EU first. I think we need to understand it's humanity first. If we do not work for humanity, India first or EU first simply will not work. I think we need to carry this message to our industry. Excellency, I will try to recall one of the situations I faced in Germany. In fact, I will not go into my experience at Brussels, wonderful experience and wonderful stories to share, and then in Austria and Yugoslavia. But I went to call on Honorable Mayor of Stuttgart. And on his table was a coffee book, which had two pictures of two buses, a public bus in Stuttgart and a public bus in Delhi. The public bus in Stuttgart had seating capacity of 40 with only 12 passengers, and the public bus in Delhi with the seating capacity same of 40 but 80 passengers. I told the Honorable Mayor, I said, Mr. Mayor, please have a look at this picture. That is what India and EU are all about. There are areas where you have the capacity and we have the demand, and there are areas where we have the capacity and you have the demand. Please look at the bigger picture, don't miss it, because sometimes we get bogged down by nitty-gritty and we miss the large picture. And believe me, if we miss the large picture, it simply does not come back. It does not come back in the original form. I think I would be inviting through this conference. I do one conference per month with Indian youth diaspora in on different themes from different journals. My next one, in fact, should have been with European Union. Somehow because of the COVID, we have postponed it to next month. We are doing it with young entrepreneurs, young professionals, and young students. We basically want to be very frank with them. Tell us what is missing in carrying this message on both sides. And we will try our best to plug those gaps so that the message is not lost in translation. With these words, I'll thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. If there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, we have...
Just you mute.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mudgal. So now we have solved the technical problem for your very interesting presentation. And I felt like you were addressing it to me. I felt absolutely addressed, in these 33 million people. I felt I have to do something, and you sort of motivated me and encouraged me. And yeah, thank you very much. And for sort of giving us the feeling that we have the power, we have the power to be these bridges, to be this yeah, really this link, this missing link, which shows what is wrong and why this deal did not work. Was it something cultural? Was it something because of the language? Was it something because of the current political context, or some sensitivities? I mean, that is something that we know better than the people who are in India, and we know them and they know us. So it's a waste if we don't use this potential. So thank you very much. And I mean, everybody has been talking about this argumentative Indian, and I've been very amused with this with this terminology of an argumentative Indian, because so when I left India, we certainly weren't argumentative. So we were very, very obedient. So I come from that generation, but I have seen, and I have a lot of Indian students now also in Germany, and I see the difference, and I see the difference in culture about, and I know what you mean. I just wanted to, I know we don't have too much time, but I must give you this anecdote about the FTA. So all three of you mentioned the FTA, the Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, Ambassador Bernd Mützelberg, and you too. And I must tell you, so I wrote my PhD dissertation on EU-India relations. And in 2007, my supervisor, Christophe Jaffrelot, and I was telling him, EU-India FTA is so close to being signed, and if I just finish my PhD and then my PhD will be outdated, if I don't mention it. And so should I wait for it? And he said, Shazia, don't wait for it, just finish it. Yeah. And I'm glad I heard him and I listened to him, because in 2021, the FTA has still not been signed, and I was hoping that Angela Merkel would do something in this European presidency, but even then it didn't happen. So, well, we will see. We will see. So that was my brief anecdote. Now the floor is open for questions. Very short questions with very short answers. Yeah, we're running out of time. We have exactly 12 minutes. So please go ahead, jump in, ask your question, and then mute your mic when you're done.
Yeah, hi, my name is Neha. I'm actually a winter semester 2020 student. I'm a student in Hochschule Neu-Ulm in Bavaria State. My question is pretty straightforward. I wanted to ask you something about, I'm sitting here on behalf of all the students who were unable to travel due to the travel ban. And that travel ban is implemented 1 month ago. Okay, so now you guys are in a Zoom call. You guys, all of you can understand how disgusting it feels when we have an online classes and everybody's having issues to understand each other. Sometimes the network is not working. You guys are sitting here and you can have the live example. You got it by yourself by attending this session. So my question lies with this: how we will have a sustainable growth? And even though the focus is on the education, if students are stuck here, and I'm here from like last 2 semesters, I'm actually a student of winter semester 2020. So if students are stuck here in India, I understand there is a global pandemic and everything, but on behalf of all the students, I have a question: how this problem will be solved and with a solution, because we want to know, is there any plan or something is there, because we are just in the middle of nowhere from last 2 semesters.
You see, I can understand your pain, and this pain is common to all of us. I'm sure you know, when in the first wave, the travel got disrupted, we carried out world's largest operation of moving people. We moved something about 4.5 million people from different places, different countries, to their destinations, including non-Indians, right? Non-Indian origin people. My own, advice to you would be, you see, now we are well on our way for stabilizing the situation. You see, till January, February this year, we were managing the pandemic. We didn't have a solution to the pandemic. But thankfully, from January onwards, with vaccination, we might have a more reliable solution. India, in fact, has already opened vaccination from age 18 onwards. Many of my near and dear people have already taken their vaccine. Once you see vaccination, I am also already hearing from European Union, they would have what is called the vaccine passport. Once you have the vaccine, probably you will have easier possibilities of travel. You know, we had this unprecedented crisis, right? Nobody could predict it. Nobody could find this instant solution to this, right? But thankfully, we are looking at a light at the end of the tunnel. And probably very soon, you all will be able, I'm looking forward to traveling. You know, I'm stuck at home for almost a year and a half now. I'm feeling sick. But then, while feeling sick is all right, I do not want to fall sick. So feeling sick is a better option than falling sick, isn't it? So please,
yeah, but when you talk about that,
bit more patience.
but I still will argue with you.
Go for your vaccination.
No, but I still argue with you. Here's the point. The point here is, even if you say that India is providing the vaccination in the entire country, to be very honest with you, there are multiple states. I am from Maharashtra in India. My state do not have vaccinations, and none of the vaccines are actually being approved by EU
Let me answer
either.
the ground reality. In fact, I have a daughter who lives in Maharashtra in Bombay. She got the vaccination day before yesterday. So please try, get your vaccine slot, be vaccinated, carry your piece of paper in hand, and nobody will stop you. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Don't lose hope.
If we get one. Not all the states in India are not getting the vaccination. That is the truth about India.
Come to Delhi, I'll get you a vaccine.
Thank you very much for your showing us an argumentative Indian again.
Yes.
Yes, I
am.
I'm very happy to see argumentative Indians, because that's my hope for future.
Yes, exactly. I mean, so there was a time when I was young when argumentative was a pejorative, you know, and now it's really positive. And I'm also telling my children to be argumentative, you know, and not to be obedient. Okay, any more questions?
Master, you want to say something? Comment on this?
Me?
No, I'm talking of dear ambassador. I saw his hand, probably. I thought he wants to say something. No. Yeah, any other question?
Yeah. Can you get me? Yes, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, please.
Well, I must say, I didn't expect very much constructive discussion here, but I'm really surprised, and I must thank all the ambassadors, Ambassador Mutzelberg, Ambassador Mudgal, and of course, the Gurjit Singh. I know the two of you, but Mr. Mudgal, we haven't met, I think. But yes, it was remarkable the way you've sort of presented your themes, and I think it's gone down very well. It'll be a very good input to the young generation, basically in Germany, as well as, I suppose, people from India also listening, and the interaction with the youth, which is very important, and the diaspora, which I think is without doubt the strongest connection that you can have. And before I forget, Shazia, you mentioned this book. I suppose you can see it. This is what Shazia assembled. And it was 2007, and I wrote an article in that book. It was called, I had forgotten, The European Union and the Indian Subcontinent, a Marriage of Convenience. So that is the theme which I think it would work on both sides, Germany, India, India, Germany, the European Union as well. So I don't want to go into any detail on any particular topic. It was very encouraging what we heard. And I suppose we should keep in touch, generally speaking. And having been in Germany for more than 40 years, and in the information technology field, when I started, it was in India very much, non-existent. But things that oh, by the way, SAP, you said, that's of course not in the hardware side, on the software side,
Yes.
set up in India as a global, so to tender for the rest of the world, the development. It started small, but
Yep.
now it is one of the major centers of SAP worldwide. So, and of course, software-wise, India has done very well. And thank you, all of you. I just wanted to express my appreciation generally. Thank you, all of you.
Surya. I mean, for people who do not
Thank you
know,
so much. Thank you so much.
For people who do not know, Surya Chandra Bose is the nephew of Subhash Chandra Bose, the grandnephew.
I will
So, can you hear me?
Is Rajesh?
So we can't hear you very well, sir. And your
conversation.
frozen.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Something wrong.
We can hear you now.
Shahji, in fact, I would send you. Yeah, I will send you my. You have my email ID.
Yes.
Please circulate to those who are interested in this diaspora youth dialogue. I promise them they will have all the freedom of expressing their views, their ideas, and I promise them we'll take their ideas to the highest possible level in India.
Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Yes.
And I was trying to make that point that for people who do not know, Surya Chandra Bose is the grandnephew of Subhash Chandra Bose.
Right? I know.
And I had just the privilege of meeting him in Hamburg, and I lost touch, and I see him again. So I'm getting in touch with you very soon, Surya. Okay, thank you very much, all of you, for sticking on till so long. And now it's time for Mr. Sanjay Tambe to give us a very short vote of thanks.
Thank you, Shazia ji. It's my pleasure and honor to meet the distinguished people here. Let me start by announcing the next German-Indian Business Summit, which is going to happen hopefully offline. And if it doesn't happen offline, that we don't see each other physically, then it'll again be happening online. Thanks to Consulate General of India in Hamburg and support of Parminder ji and Seema Singh. Today's event also could take place in a big way. And of course, the distinguished guests, Anup ji, Mutkal ji, and I would say Gurjeet Singh ji. I've seen all of you personally here in Germany. Nice to see you back again. Hello to India, namaste to India. And Mr. Bernd Mützelberg, it was really like Mr. Bose said, that one would expect from such a discussion, without knowing what's going to be discussed, because it said leaders talk, and it can be business, it can be something like a discussion which between India, China, etc., etc. But it turned out to be a very, very enchanting discussion and very current discussion. Also, some questions were answered, which are very current. So I felt very nice to be a part of this and helping out here. Also, students from Hochschule Bremen, Mr. Amrit Pathak and Priya, they have also been a big support. And the Hochschule Bremen and Jinko are part of this German Indian Business Summit, which is a GIBS. Please participate in that. If you would like to, contribute to such events in the future, please be a part of this network, which is called German Indian Business Summit. There is a website also for this, so please join that website. And of course, Rajesh ji is leading this chapter of GIBS. So also thanks to Rajesh ji that this thing is coming in place. Not to forget Dr. Amit Telan from Frankfurt, Consul General of India in Frankfurt, with a big support, and I would say last minute support, which was very, very valuable for this event to happen, particularly in getting all these participants and getting a very substantial input here. My role has been very minor, and I connected very well to the speakers and to the issues which are being expressed by students as well as businessmen. So I would like to hear more on this. Let's keep all of us in touch, and a big, big, big thank you to all of you for spending time on this platform. See you again very soon. Namaste. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. I would want to also say hello to Amit. Amit worked with me in Delhi, very dear friend of mine. We were together in Germany. He was in Berlin, I was in Munich. But I didn't see him.
He's here. You can see him.
I'm very happy to see you again, Mr. Bose. Please stay well and safe.
Okay, thanks a lot. Let's be in touch.
Yeah.
Sir, Mr. Mudgal sir, can I say something?
Yeah, please do so.
Sir, everybody stated that the problem is of perspective. So we should focus on the fact that how did this perspective is built? This perspective is built because in Germany, whenever the word India is taken, the image shown is of calamity, poverty, or pandemic. We need to stop this negative propaganda and show the real picture. Show that the biggest solar park is in India. Show that the image of India distributing vaccines to different countries. We need to change this perspective. This is the solution I think that this is the only solution we have.
Please carry the right picture in your hands all the time.
Sir, we have the pictures, but we need something to show. We need
Please be
channel.
part of that. Please be part of the Youth Diaspora platform. And as I said, we will listen to you very carefully. And I can assure you, your message will reach the highest possible levels in Government of India.
Thank you, sir.
I wish to thank you all and take your leave. I'm very privileged to be a
so
part
much.
of this.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Dr. Shazia. Thank you, Consul General, for inviting us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Butzelberg, Ambassador.
Very excellent.
Bye all.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Shazia.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. All the best.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Right.
Bye.